Hi, and welcome to Voice with Julia. Today we're going to talk about phonation. How do I know I'm making good phonation? Simple answer, singing is easy. Okay, but what if it's not? How do I check and correct it? Let's start with onsets. Onsets are the foundation of every good tone. And you probably just tuned me out right now because you've heard this sentence so many times and it probably doesn't even mean anything anymore. But it's actually the truth. Just for fun, I'm going to show you 3 examples of your typical onsets. So we can do a breathy onset, which is or we can do a glottal onset, which is like or we can do something in the middle, which is like So I think somewhere in that middle range is healthy. Now, depending on the mood you want to express, you may want a different onset for that one phrase, but you don't want that to be your default or you're going to get into trouble. So a nice balanced onset will naturally bring the support in. Beware of imposter tones. Imposter tones might sound good, but they don't have the correct support under them, and so that means that it's actually not correct phonation. So now let's do a couple exercises. I want you to find something in your lower range or a comfortable range for you if that's mid. The lower you can start, the better, I would say, without pressing. Now, if you have a tendency towards one onset or the other, try to come somewhere in the middle, okay? So we're gonna start something like okay, and what I want you to feel is that there's no obvious clinking around of the registration as you go up. And that will indicate that the throat stays nice and open and there's no pharyngeal restriction as you're heading up. So you might have noticed that on that slide, there was no hitch between the transition of what we traditionally think of as chest voice to head voice. And that's because I maintained an open throat. So if you're hearing something like that's actually pharyngeal squeezing, okay? And you could hear where I sort of flipped over into a different registration. So that's gonna cause problems in the voice as you go up in the scale. So if you can't seem to release that tension and have a fluid sound from your chest tone up into your head tone, I suggest you feel something. What I like to recommend is that you actually feel like you have a Dracula collar on or fish gills, and as you go up in the scale, you feel that your throat actually expands outward a little bit. So, that way it takes away that tendency to constrict as you go up or down. As I talked about in my last video about breathing, support will come in when the phonation is right. So if you're doing this exercise and you're feeling a lot in your body, that is a good sign that you're on the right track. If you don't feel a lot in your body, you might want to just keep looking or make sure that you're really tuning into what your body's feeling. So again, we're going to feel that So once you get really comfortable, I suggest you try sliding through your range. Now, this is going to be a little tricky and you might need to find a little bit more of that support before you attempt this, but a full-bodied slide would sound something like Now I want to give you an example of a slide that might not be quite coordinated through the phonatory process, where you might be squeezing a little bit. That's restricting the phonation. So if you begin so now you hear my voice like cracked, right? Now it was cracking because it was actually under the wrong kind of pressure. So the phonation couldn't be correct in its natural state. I would have had to do something to continue the normal phonation up at the top. But for the sake of the video, I just decided not to. Now, what can happen is if you keep doing that over and over, the body adapts and so develops ways of maintaining phonation up there, but it's not free phonation. So you might get something like, ah. Okay, so not good. You're squeezing, right? Okay, one exercise I really like to make sure that I'm maintaining this correct balanced phonation all the way through the scale are just portamento slides on octaves. So if I begin paying very close attention to the onset, okay, so another exercise I like to do are like sostenuto staccati exercises going down. So if we do so, onsets on upper notes. This is traditionally a problem. We can either restrict the phonation by not sending enough breath or by squeezing. So, when you're working with your upper range, I would really consciously think about this Dracula collar idea, which is like expanding out in the sides of the neck. And also, think about that airflow starting before that onset. So again, the qualities of good phonation are ease. Let's take a simple song that probably everybody knows, Caro mio ben. And I'm going to show you what free phonation sounds and feels like. And then I'm going to give you an example of restricted phonation, but that might still sound good. So you can know what to listen for. Now if we got a little bit squeezed phonation, we could do Now, the difference between those two, actually, in some ways, the second one felt that I could control it a little bit better. But the first one, I felt that the voice was smooth through all the registers, especially when I came down. I could tell I didn't have to change or do anything. That is a good sign that something's a little off balance if you have to change suddenly or do something. Now, what would be an example of a little too loose phonation? Okay. So we could maybe set our larynx a little bit high for a breathier sound. All the bad examples that I just showed you are not actually bad. And I'm sure most people would find it aesthetically acceptable, but I literally could not sing all night like that. I would die, okay? So that is a good indicator that the phonation is not correct. You're gonna need to work with your teacher on this, on finding the release. But I find what really helps is paying attention to that onset, making sure you're not holding or grabbing. The other thing to be very cautious about is an attempt to find the right thing, okay? And let's say you find it with your teacher and you're like, yes, I know what this onset feels like. Be careful, because actually, depending on the day, depending on how you're feeling, that feeling in your throat can change. So what is normally a breathier onset that would feel correct to you might need a little bit more glottal balance that day. So it's important that in working with your onsets, you always go through the process every single day. Now, I'm not saying that your vocal technique changes every day, but the approach cannot be like, I always feel this in my throat this way, always, because you're gonna run into problems if you are that inflexible. Onsets can suffer the most from inflexible mindset, so it's important that you really retain this sense of experimentation. I don't know what's gonna happen when I open my mouth. In closing, phonation should be neither breathy nor pressed. And the indicator that you're gonna know if you're doing one or the other is that those transitions in the voice are gonna feel a little bumpy, okay? So go to your onset. Check your onset. It shouldn't be too breathy, it shouldn't be too pressed. You may need outside ears to help guide you there. If you still can't find that with your onsets are good and you're going up the scale, your constrictor muscles may be squeezing as you go up. So check that feeling of expansiveness in the throat as you ascend so that those muscles are not helping, and that way the breath does the work. Good indicator you're doing this right is the body is really working. All right, namaste. Y'all are great. Thank you so much for watching. If you liked my video, please subscribe below, and I look forward to seeing you in my next video.